If you traveled around the Earth, you'd see soaring mountains and boiling volcanoes, gentle beaches and pounding surf, rolling fields of grain, and cracks where the Earth's surface has torn apart and shifted. You'd find gentle breezes and thundering tornadoes and hurricanes.
All of these things, from the gentle breezes to this hurricane, are part of the natural way our Earth and atmosphere behave. In themselves, they're not good or bad. We call them natural phenomena. Roughly translated, that means stuff that happens in nature. But natural phenomena can sometimes turn dangerous. When one strikes a place where we humans live and work, well, it can be a disaster. The damage can be enormous. When this happens, natural phenomena get a new name: natural disasters. This has got to be one of the most spectacular sights on Earth. The fiery liquid gushing out of the Earth is rock. Rock that's so hot it has melted and become liquid. How hot is that? Over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what we call lava. And the mountain that's blasting it out is called a volcano.
The lava actually built this mountain. It flows down the mountain like a river. It forms pools and lakes. It burns up anything it touches. When the lava finally cools, it gets hard and turns back into solid rock. The rock builds up layer after layer over thousands of years and creates a mountain. Sometimes, instead of flowing, the lava erupts high into the air like fireworks. And many volcanoes explode with a mixture of ash, hot gases, and pieces of rock. It rises high into the air and surges down the mountain like a tidal wave. This is called a pyroclastic flow. That sounds like a fancy name, but pyroclastic really just means hot rocks. And it is very hot, as much as 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. A pyroclastic flow can race down the side of a volcano at over 100 miles an hour. It can bury anything in its path. Pyroclastic flows are the most dangerous feature of a volcano. You can often recognize a volcano by its shape, even if it's not erupting. Many volcanoes are shaped like cones. They are some of the highest and most dramatic mountains on the planet, like Mount Fuji in Japan, or Kilimanjaro in Africa, or Mount Rainier in Washington State. But cones are not the only volcano shape. This is Mauna Loa in Hawaii. Here the lava from the volcano has spread out into a broader, flatter shape. It's called a shield volcano. That makes it the tallest structure on Earth, higher even than Mount Everest. Some volcanic lava flows don't build mountains at all. A flood of lava from a large crack in the Earth's crust can spread out over thousands of square miles. It hardens into a type of rock called basalt. A large part of eastern Washington and Oregon is covered with a basalt flood. In some places, it's over 2 miles thick.
So, what causes volcanoes? Where does the melted rock come from? And what pushes it up with such force? To find out, we'll take a look deep into the Earth.
If you could cut a section out of the Earth, you'd see that it isn't the same all the way through. On the outside is the crust. Compared to the rest of the Earth, it's thin and brittle, like an eggshell. The crust is where we live. All of the land and oceans are part of the crust. In the center of the Earth is the core. It's made up of iron and small amounts of a few other things. The core is incredibly hot. In between the core and the crust is an area called the mantle. It's made up of the same minerals we see in rocks, but in the mantle, the minerals are under such pressure that they get hot and melt. This hot mineral soup is called magma. Magma flows around the mantle like currents in an ocean, but very slowly. When a crack forms in the Earth's crust, some of the magma forces its way into the crack. But sometimes it can't break through to the surface right away. It builds up pressure, similar to the pressure in a bottle of soda if you shake it. When the pressure is great enough, the magma blasts out. When magma reaches the Earth's surface, we call it lava. In some volcanoes, the rising magma throws out a huge cloud of hot gases, ash, and pieces of rock, a pyroclastic flow.
Where do most volcanoes happen? A volcano can't just happen anywhere. That mountain in your house can't suddenly turn into a volcano. Volcanoes are caused by large forces within the Earth, and they can only happen in places where these forces create the right conditions. Remember we said that the Earth's crust is kind of like an eggshell, thin and brittle. But it's not like the whole smooth shell of this egg. It's more like this one, an eggshell cracked into a few large pieces. Right now, the pieces of the Earth's crust are arranged like this. Each piece is called a plate.
The plates weren't always where they are now. They move. This animation shows how they've migrated around the Earth over the past 600 million years. The plates are still moving, even now, but very slowly. This motion is the key to the formation of volcanoes. When two moving plates bump into each other, something's got to give. Plates under the ocean are denser than plates under continents, so when they meet, the ocean plate is forced down under the continental plate and into the mantle. The incredible heat of the mantle melts the rock of the plate. The melted rock, the magma, pushes up through cracks in the crust, forming volcanoes. This means that most volcanoes form along the boundaries between two moving plates. Some of these boundaries form a ring around the Pacific Ocean. The ring is studded with volcanoes, so scientists sometimes call it the Ring of Fire. We also find volcanoes in other places where plates meet, in the Caribbean, around the Mediterranean, and in New Zealand.
How about Hawaii? Hawaii's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There aren't any plates bumping into each other under Hawaii, but there are more volcanoes in Hawaii than almost any place else. In fact, the islands themselves were created as volcanoes that rose up from the ocean floor. Here's how Hawaii was formed. There's something called a hot spot underneath the ocean floor. It's an area of unusual heat and pressure in the middle of a plate. The hot spot forced magma up through the cracks to form the volcano that gradually became an island. But the hot spot moves, so after one island had formed, the hot spot created another and another. From the air, you can see that the islands are in a row, showing how the hot spot moved. Hot spots happen under continents too, not just under oceans. You might have visited the area over one hot spot, Yellowstone Park. The hot spot, deep in the earth, provides the heat for all the geysers and bubbling mud pools. Volcanoes are part of the natural processes of the earth. They could bring terrible disaster, but they also have a lot of benefits for humans. Think about those bubbling mud plots in Yellowstone Park. Wouldn't it be nice if we could capture that heat and use it in our homes?
Well, that's exactly what they do right here. This is the largest city in Iceland, and almost all of its buildings are heated by hot water from underground. Water is heated by volcanic action. Some of the best farmland in the world is in soil created by volcanoes. The minerals and ash from the volcano make the soil very fertile. Because of this, a large percentage of the world's people live on land created by volcanoes. An important part of our food supply comes from volcanic soils.
But in the long history of the Earth, volcanoes have played an even bigger role. When the Earth first formed, there was no water and no atmosphere. The water was bound up in all the minerals of the Earth. Over several billion years, all the water and atmosphere on Earth has been brought to the surface by volcanoes. It happens very slowly, but volcanoes are still providing more water today with each eruption. Volcanoes are not only useful and helpful, they are absolutely essential to life on Earth. Without volcanoes, this would be a dead planet. No volcanoes, no atmosphere, no water, no life. How do you think you'd like to do this for a job? This is a scientist on a volcano in Hawaii. She's collecting samples of volcanic gas from the active vent. Scientists who study volcanoes are called volcanologists. When they were in school and college, most volcanologists studied geology and took courses in science and math. Many volcanologists went on after college to get master's degrees or PhDs. Volcanologists look for better ways of predicting when and where volcanoes might erupt. Pretty important information if you happen to live near a volcano. To do this, volcanologists must understand all things that happen before the volcano erupts, before it's too late. Mostly those things happen out of sight, deep in the earth. So, how do they do it?
One way is to measure changes in the shape of the volcano. When magma starts forcing its way up, the whole volcano swells a bit. Not enough for you or me to notice, but instruments like these, tilt meters, levels, and lasers, can detect very minute changes. Volcanologists also must watch for changes in the gases that come out of a volcano. When magma starts pushing up towards the surface, these instruments can detect a difference in the mix of gases. That alerts the scientists that something is about to happen. Some of the scientists don't have to actually be on the volcano to study it. These scientists are using a seismograph to detect earthquakes. They're not just looking for the big earthquakes, the ones that can shake your whole house. These seismographs can detect very, very small earthquakes, so small you wouldn't even feel it. As the magma pushes up through the volcano, it puts huge pressure on the rocks, bending and breaking them. Sometimes the rocks stop the magma for a while. The magma builds up pressure until it breaks through the rock. The result? An earthquake. If the scientists can tell exactly where the tremor is coming from, they can learn a lot about a volcano, maybe even how soon it's likely to blow its top.
The work of these scientists make us all much safer. Nobody can prevent a volcano from erupting. But if scientists can predict when and where an eruption might happen, people in the area will have a chance to get out of the way. Most of us will probably never be near an erupting volcano. But if you live near an active volcano, there are a few things that you should remember to do to stay safe. The most important thing is really pretty simple. Pay attention to volcano warnings in your community. Even if you can't see anything happening, take the warning seriously and follow instructions. Remember how fast things can happen and how fast they move once the eruption starts. So if you hear a warning, don't go closer to see what's happening, and don't even think you can outrun it when it starts. There's almost always plenty of warning before an eruption takes place. So if you follow instructions, you'll be okay. Okay, let's see what we've learned. Are you ready? What kinds of materials can come out of a volcanic eruption? Right, lava of course, but also ash, hot gases, and pieces of rock. When this mixture rushes down the side of the volcano, we call it a pyroclastic flow. It can move up to 100 miles per hour. Now, how is a volcano, the mountain itself, formed? Yup, the lava itself builds the mountain. Lava from each eruption flows down the sides, then cools and hardens. It builds up the mountain, layer by layer. They can become some of the highest mountains on Earth. Now, do you remember why there are so many volcanoes around the Pacific Ocean? Right, because that's where one moving plate pushes under another, diving down into the mantle where it melts. There are so many volcanoes around the Pacific that we call this area Ring of Fire. Volcanic islands like Hawaii are different though. They are the result of a hot spot moving under the ocean's floor. Volcanoes aren't all disaster though. Some of the benefits for humans are fertile soil for crops and a source of heat and energy. And the biggest one, if it were to fall volcanoes, there would be no air or water on the planet. Volcanologists, the scientists who study volcanoes, look at several things to tell if an eruption is about to happen. Remember what they are? When an eruption is on its way, the volcano changes shape slightly. The mix of gases coming from the top changes, and scientists can detect more earthquakes from deep inside the volcano. Volcanoes are some of the most powerful displays of force on the Earth. They change the landscape and sometimes threaten the lives and homes of people who live nearby. Fortunately, volcanoes usually give us some warning before they erupt. If people are out of the way, this natural phenomenon does not have to be a natural disaster.